Most people believe that the way to defeat the narcissist is to expose them, to prove they're lying, to show everyone who they really are. But if you ever tried that, you probably noticed something strange. The narcissist didn't back down. They escalated. They attacked harder. They turned people against you. And suddenly, you're left wondering, why does this person hate me so much? The answer is uncomfortable. You didn't lose because you were wrong. You lost because you made the narcissist feel small. And nothing triggers a narcissist more than humiliation. This is exactly why the first law in Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power exists. Never outshine the master. Because when someone's identity depends on feeling superior, making them feel small is the fastest way to create an enemy. But here's the part most people never understand. You don't defeat the narcissist by attacking their ego. You defeat them by controlling it. But I'm not here to tell you to bow down to narcissists. And I'm definitely not here to tell you to shrink yourself. What I'm gonna show you is far more dangerous. How to give a narcissist the illusion of superiority while you quietly control the direction of the game. Because smart people don't fight narcissists head on. They let the narcissist feel like the king while they control the board. And once you understand how their ego actually works, narcissists stop feeling like powerful enemies and start becoming predictable pieces on your chessboard. And once that happens, they become nothing more than a puppet with its string in your hands. In this video, we'll break down 4 real-life situations where people accidentally trigger narcissistic rage and the strategic move that you can use instead. Let's begin. One of the most common ways people accidentally trigger a narcissist is by correcting them. And the worst part is, most people do it without even realizing it. It sounds harmless. In fact, most people think it's the rational thing to do. Someone says something wrong, you point it out. Simple. But when the person you're dealing with is a narcissist, that moment can become extremely dangerous. Imagine this. You're having a conversation with your partner. Maybe you're talking about something that happened earlier that day. And they tell the story in a way that clearly twists the facts. Maybe they exaggerate something. Maybe they completely change what actually happened. And because you value honesty, you interrupt them and you say something like, wait, that's not what happened. Or, no, you're remembering it wrong. Or even worse, no, that's not true. You're lying. Logically, you're just correcting the story. I get it. But psychologically, something else just happened. You didn't just disagree with them. You challenged their version of reality. And to a narcissist, their version of reality is deeply tied to their ego. So in that moment, the narcissist does not hear your correction. They feel something completely different. Humiliation. You made them feel exposed. Narcissists, they don't tolerate that feeling. So what happens next? Maybe they suddenly become defensive. Maybe they raise their voice. Maybe they flip the conversation and accuse you of attacking them. Or maybe they go quiet. And later, you start noticing the punishment. Cold behavior, passive aggression, sudden distance. Because in their mind, the conversation stopped being about what actually happened. It became about restoring their sense of superiority. Now here's the move that most people never realize. If you want to deal with narcissists intelligently, then don't correct them directly. Instead, focus on guiding the conversation in a way that allows them to adjust the story themselves. For example, instead of saying, that's not what happened, you might say something like this. Wait, I might be remembering this differently, but didn't the manager say that the meeting was moved to tomorrow? Now something interesting happens. Instead of feeling attacked, they feel invited to reconsider. They can pause. They have time to adjust the story. And they can say something like this. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that part. The correction still happens, but the narcissist never feels publicly exposed. You protected the truth, but more importantly, you protected their ego. And when you understand how fragile that ego really is, you stop accidentally triggering narcissistic conflict and start quietly steering the interaction instead. That's the difference between reacting to narcissists and outplaying them. But correcting a narcissist isn't the only way people accidentally trigger their ego. And this one is even far more dangerous, because this time you didn't argue with them. You didn't correct them. You didn't even challenge them at all. All you did was succeed. Now imagine this. You're in a relationship with someone who has strong narcissistic tendencies. At the beginning of the relationship, everything seemed supportive. They celebrated your goals. They encouraged your ambitions. They told you how proud they were of you. But then something changes. You get a promotion. Your career starts growing, and people begin respecting you more. You gain confidence, and suddenly, the person who once supported you starts acting very differently. They become distant, critical, passive-aggressive. Maybe they even start making subtle comments like, don't get too full of yourself. Or, you've changed since you got that promotion. And you You sit there thinking, why does my success suddenly make this person that uncomfortable? Here's what's really happening. To a narcissist, especially the covert type, your success doesn't feel like something inspiring. It feels like a threat to their status, because in their mind, in their own delusioned reality, they are supposed to be the impressive one, not you. They're supposed to be the admired one, the superior one. So when your life starts shining, their ego feels overshadowed. And this is where covert narcissists become particularly dangerous. They don't explode like an overt narcissist, but instead, they sabotage you. Quietly. They undermine your confidence, they criticize your achievements, and they subtly try to pull you back down. Not because your success hurts them directly, but because your success makes them feel smaller by comparison. Now here's where most people make the situation worse. They celebrate their success more loudly. They defend themselves. They argue. And every one of those reactions makes the narcissist feel even more threatened. But the strategic move isn't something very different. Instead of presenting your success as something separate from them, try framing it as something that reflects on them positively. For example, instead of saying, I worked really hard for this promotion, you might say something like, you know, honestly, being around you taught me a lot about handling pressure like this. I really appreciate it. I think watching how you deal with things really helped me grow. Now something interesting happens. Instead of feeling overshadowed, the narcissist feels associated with your success. Your achievements? Yeah, now they reinforce their identity instead of threatening it. And once that happens, their attitude shifts, because now, protecting your success means protecting their own sense of importance. This doesn't mean that you're shrinking yourself, by the way. You're simply redirecting the narrative so that the narcissist never feels like they're losing their status. And once you understand this dynamic, you start realizing something very important. When dealing with narcissists, success is not just about what you achieve. It's about how you present that achievement. Yeah, but there's another trap that people fall into every single time. And this one usually happens in relationships or friendships. It's the moment that you decide you're gonna win the argument. Now think about it. You're arguing with someone who has narcissistic tendencies. Maybe it's a partner. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a family member. And then you start realizing something. Their argument doesn't make sense. Their logic is flawed. Their story keeps changing. So what do most people do in that situation? They do what any rational person would do. They start dismantling the narcissist argument piece by piece. You bring facts, you bring examples, you bring receipts, you point out contradictions. And for a moment, it does feel like you're winning. You can literally see the narcissist running out of arguments. But then something strange happens. The conversation stops being about the topic, and suddenly, it becomes personal. The narcissist raises their voice. They change the subject, or maybe they even bring up things from months ago, maybe even ages ago. They accuse you of things that have nothing to do with the argument. And sometimes, they can explode completely. People leave that conversation confused, thinking, why did this escalate so quickly? Here's why. To a narcissist, an argument is not about the search for truth. It's a status battle. And when you logically corner them, they don't feel corrected. They feel defeated, humiliated. And humiliation is something narcissists, they cannot tolerate. So instead of accepting the argument, they attack the person who made them feel small. Now here's where the strategy changes. When you're dealing with a narcissist, winning the argument is often the fastest way to lose the war, because the more that you prove them wrong, the more determined they become to punish you. Smart people understand something different. They stop trying to win the argument and start trying to control the outcome. For example, instead of saying that doesn't make any sense, you're contradicting yourself, you might say something like, maybe I am misunderstanding you, but what I hear you saying is that you want this situation to improve, right? Now you're not attacking their logic. You're redirecting the conversation toward a goal. And once a narcissist agrees with the goal, now's the time to guide the conversation toward the solution. Suddenly, the narcissist can say, exactly, that's what I meant. They feel like they maintain control of the argument, but the outcome is exactly where you wanted it to go. Now that is what I call psychological judo. You're not fighting their ego head on. You're just using its momentum to redirect the situation in your favor. And when you learn how to do that, arguments with narcissists stop being exhausting battles and start becoming chess games that you quietly control. Now, success in a romantic relationship isn't the only time that narcissists feel threatened. Sometimes The trigger is even simpler than that. It's attention. Because for many narcissists, attention isn't just something that they enjoy. It's something that they really believe with conviction that they own. And when someone else naturally starts attracting that attention, the narcissist doesn't see it as a normal social moment. They see it as a challenge to their status. Imagine this. You're at a social gathering. Maybe it's a group of friends. Maybe it's a dinner party, whatever. And then there's that's someone who's always been used to being the center of attention. The storyteller, the charismatic one, the person that everyone usually listens to. But tonight, something different happens. You start talking. People laugh at your jokes, and then maybe they even start asking you questions. The energy in the room slowly shifts toward you. Now, to most people, it feels natural. But to a narcissist, this moment feels like something very different. It feels like their spotlight is being stolen. That's when their ego turns into defense mode. Sometimes you'll see it immediately. They interrupt you. They talk all over you. They suddenly start telling even bigger and better stories. Or maybe they try to subtly undermine you in front of the group. Other times it can be quieter. They become cold, dismissive, passive-aggressive. And people leave those interactions confused, thinking, why does this person suddenly seem so hostile toward me? What the hell did I do? Here's why. To a narcissist, attention is not just social energy. It's status. I know I've said status like a million times today, but really to a narcissist, everything is about status. And when someone else naturally attracts attention in their presence, in this case, that person is you, it feels like they are losing status in front of the group, like you're publicly undermining them on purpose. That's how they see it. Now, here's the mistake that most people make. When they notice this tension, they start competing. They talk louder. They tell better stories. They try to prove that they are more interesting. But the more that you compete with a narcissist for attention, the more determined they become to destroy your image in that group. Now, here's the strategic move. Instead of competing for the spotlight, you redirect it. For example, imagine someone compliments you in front of everyone. Instead of absorbing all the attention, you say something like this. Honestly, if anyone here knows how to tell a story, it's probably him. And you gesture toward the narcissist. Now something interesting happens. The narcissist's ego relaxes. They feel acknowledged. They feel admired. Their status feels restored because you just soothed their ego. Now suddenly, the competition disappears. Because in their mind, they're still the center of the room. Here's the interesting part. Even though you gave them the spotlight, you didn't lose influence. In fact, you gained it because people notice something subtle. The person who can give away attention without needing it, that person often appears more confident than the person fighting to keep it. And once you understand that dynamic, you stop competing with narcissists for attention and start quietly controlling the social atmosphere instead. Now, that's the difference between reacting to narcissists and quietly controlling the entire chessboard. All right, now if you look carefully at the 4 situations we just explored, they all trigger the same hidden mechanism inside a narcissistic personality. It's not logic, it's ego. The moment a narcissist feels inferior, their mind stops thinking about the situation and starts thinking about restoring their status. And that's why so many people struggle when dealing with narcissistic people, because they think that they're having a conversation, but the narcissist thinks that they're fighting a status battle. Once you understand that, everything changes. You stop trying to defeat narcissists with logic. You stop trying to expose them. You stop trying to win the argument, and instead, you start controlling the one thing that actually controls them, their ego. Now that's the real meaning behind never outshine the master. Not a weakness. Strategy. All right, now I'm curious about something. Have you ever noticed someone suddenly turning hostile the moment that you corrected them or succeeded in front of them? Let me know what happened. I read the comments, by the way. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Ferris, but narcissists are not the only people who react this way. And you're right. So in the next video, we're going to talk about something even far more dangerous. What happens when someone powerful publicly insults you? And not because they're angry, but because they're testing your place in the hierarchy. So if you want to understand these power dynamics better, make sure you subscribe. See you next Friday. This was Social Chess with Mo Ferris. Checkmate.